I prefer the term social drinker. After a long day of work, sometimes you just have to wet your whistle. I'm a rather blessed and successful man. I have 3 adult sons who, might I add, are all married, right? And my wife looks just as beautiful as the day we married. I can still remember the day. Actually, I'm not sure if I remember too well. I may have had too much to drink. Maybe she's not as beautiful as I remember. Please don't tell her that. You can keep a secret, right? All right, good. Honestly, one of the reasons that I drink is to pass the time to numb me to all the craziness that's going on in the world. On some days, I like to take a stroll and go for a walk to see the beautiful Garden of Eden. It's kind of hard to believe that such a prodigious and beautiful garden could be surrounded by such evil and chaos. And I like to look at the flaming swords that guard the entrance. Some people say those are angels, but like I said, everyone's kind of heavy on the sauce nowadays. I just I just wonder if things are always going to be like this. I'm glad you asked. Did you guys hear that? Maybe that was just me. Because I'm sober, right? I plan to end things on earth, and I need you to build an ark to save those that wish to be saved. I will provide the plans. Okay, say less. It's about time there was something for me to do. So after about 150 years, the ark was built that could save everyone that was alive had they chosen to be saved. But sadly, only 8. My wife, my sons, their wives, and myself were the only humans out of billions that were saved on the whole earth. Sometimes I think back to myself, why would God choose a drunk like me? Who am I? I'm glad you asked. I am one of many princes in my country. I have title, land, wealth, servants, and the list goes on. I want to need nothing. There are days I feel uneasy, like when there's like ants in your pants, except for me, it would be a tunic because I didn't have pants. Just as my uneasiness was growing, I heard a voice telling me to leave my father's house and head to a land that I would be shown. I knew this was the voice of the Lord, and I answered his call. I packed up all my belongings, my servants, my beautiful but barren wife. Oh, that was a Freudian slip. Please don't tell her I said that to you guys. Last time someone mentioned it, a fire mysteriously started, but I definitely have my suspicions. So we departed in the direction I was instructed to go. As I was no longer in my home time and not up to the dates of what's going on, I was unable to keep up to the times, so I was unaware of the famine in the land. So the closest place we had to go for food was, you guessed it, Egypt. As we approached Egypt, I spoke to my wife, knowing she was fine. And I know exactly how Adam felt when he saw Eve for the first time and said, she is the bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And knowing this, I told her we would partake in a partial lie, as we are righteous people and we shouldn't partake in a full lie, because that's what unrighteous people do, obviously. So we'll tell them you are my sister, which she was technically my half stepsister, twice removed. Because if they find out she's my wife, they might off me, and we won't be able to help God fulfill his role at creating the promise he gave me. So let's do our part. You could help a brother out, right, wife? Appreciate you. But apparently, God did not like that plan. Pharaoh saw she was beautiful and took her, and I was like, I understand. But God said, nah, we're not doing this. You get a plague, all of Egypt gets a plague. Pharaoh was a tad bit upset, and I was like, oh, I forgot the part. Yes, she's my sister, but she's also my wife. Pharaoh's like, get out. We don't want you guys here. And he's like, sorry. As our journey continues, I often pondered, I'm getting up there in age. My wife is getting there up in age. When are we going to have this promised child? God heard me and said, look up. What do you see? Since it was nighttime in the cool desert sky, far from city lights, the stars were heavily sprinkled on the nighttime canvas sky, and I replied, the stars, and there are a lot of them. God then asked me if I could count them. I said, I could try, but there seems to be more than our current number system can handle. God then told me, that will be your descendants. And I was extremely grateful because I knew that as me, because she was wondering when as well. But she's like, let me take the initiative because you know how they tell you it's better to be proactive than reactive. So she handed me her maidservant and said, lie with her and she would be a surrogate mother and we would assist God in his plan of giving us a promised child. I knew that she was kind of young, and against my better judgment, I also remembered happy wife, happy life. So I listened, and a boy was born, and we were happy. But not too long after, there were issues, and we had to send the mother and the boy away. Our son of promise was eventually born, and we named him Isaac. God is always good and always comes through like he said he would. But sometimes I think back to myself, why would God choose an impatient liar like myself? Who am I? I'm glad you asked. I'm a twin, the younger one. I know most twins are hard to tell apart, but my brother and I may look alike, but somehow during meiosis, he inherited most of the body hair. So the best way to tell us apart is one looks like a Neanderthal and the other looks like he partakes in competitive swimming. And to top it all off, they named me Deceiver. The audacity. I mean, I did trick my brother into handing over his birthright by preying on his caveman hunger. Maybe I did trick my father, with the help of my mother, might I add, to hand me the blessing of the firstborn. Maybe technically I was supposed to be born first, but that hairy oaf of a brother pushed me back with all his hair. I was fighting for my life in the womb not to get tangled in there. And can you believe they almost forgot about me in there? Talk about a hard life. I had to clutch my brother's heel so they could see me in there so they wouldn't leave me in there. Because they were like, how could there be another baby in there with all this hair? In my defense, I was only a deceiver because that was the name given to me, and I don't want to call my parents liars, right? So it's the least I could do to thank them for naming me. Granted, my choices to deceive left me with no choice but to run away and be swindled by my uncle. But we'll save that story for another time. Sometime later, I was truly sorry for what I had done and repented. God then changed my name from deceiver to he who struggles with God. Sometimes I think back on myself, why would God choose to wrestle and bless a deceiver like me? Who am I? Well, I'm glad you guys asked. You see, I am something of an entrepreneur. I am self-employed, but one could say I'd inherited the family business. I live in a large city with great big walls, and I have prime real estate on the edge. I live upstairs, but the business is downstairs. We get all sorts of visitors, you see, those local and domestic, from the upper echelon to the dregs of society. If the coin is right, the service is available. As a madam, I must daily inspect how my goods are doing and if customers are satisfied with services rendered. I noticed two men, shady looking. They don't stand out too much. We get all sorts. But they clearly were not from around here because they had camel skin jackets, and everyone knows camel skin jackets was last season. The men were looking around frantically, I know the type, on the run and needing somewhere to lie low. I invited them in, but they were warm and kind, not like the usual ruffians that stole through making demands. I chatted them up for a bit, then one of my girls ran up to me to let me know the guards are outside. The men stopped speaking and froze. I understood the assignment. I told them to go hide in the old pile of camel skins, where they would blend in perfectly from last season, and I would send the guards away. So I spoke to the guards and asked them if they were here for their usual special. They asked if we saw any suspicious men, then I reminded them of what kind of business I ran. We get all sorts of types. Could you be more specific? Then she said, I remember one of my clients came in saying they did see a pair of suspicious men, but they went that way. The guards nodded and said, thank you. Inform us if you hear of anything else. I then helped the men to escape in the opposite direction over the wall. And I told them to remember me. Little did I know that I would end up joining one of their tribes and that the savior of the world would one day be part of my lineage. Sometimes I think back to myself, why would God choose a madam who ran a brothel for a living? Who am I? I'm glad you asked. I'm actually really, really strong, like ridiculously strong. Want to touch my biceps? No? Okay, we just met. Boundaries, I completely understand. How did I get this strong? Well, I'm glad you asked. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and a 10-mile run every day until your hair falls out. What? Why do I still have my hair? It's a great hair care routine. You know, I gotta tell you about it. You know, I learned it from this guy named Fabio, but you know, anyways. My My parents were given specific instructions how to raise me from a young age. You know the old adage, train up a child in the way they should go and they will not depart. But according to me, either that adage wasn't true or my parents just didn't try hard enough. I didn't always have this attitude. I actually used to be humble at one point, which I can't remember when, maybe when I was still a child, but that's not here nor there. And maybe it went wrong sometime. These things happen. You got to learn to make your own decisions. I'm wondering where things went wrong. Perhaps it was the one time I was invited to this party and I arm wrestled about 50 people at once and I won. I still think they're kind of salty about that, but I'm sure they're over it. You know, guys are guys. We get over things. They even set me up with this hot girl, and her name was Delilah. Boy, let me tell you, I think she might be the one. Even on our first date, she showed a lot of interest in me. She asked about my workout routine and the secret to my strength, how my mom was doing and the secret to my strength, if I was hungry and the secret to my strength. I'm telling you, she seems honest and straight as they come. I eventually fell for her and told her that I am never supposed to cut my hair as that is the source of my strength. I eventually did fall asleep in her warm embrace because, like I said, she was the one. But then she wakes me up saying, "There's intruders in the house. What are we gonna do?" I said, "I got this." So I pull out in my PJs and I walk over to one of them and I say, "Excuse me." Ow, that's never happened before. I was so confused, but before I could do anything, I was subdued, and this had never happened to me in my life. And the last thing I saw before my eyes getting gouged out was my sweet Delilah receiving payment for betraying me. Apparently, the salty people are the ones who set this up. I guess they were still upset I beat them in arm wrestling. I finally realized the errors of my ways, and I asked God another chance to do that which I was supposed to do. And I realized that at that same time, it wasn't my hair that was my strength. It was God who was giving me the strength. Sometimes I think back to myself, why would God use a short-tempered, lacking accountability person like me? Who am I? I'm glad you asked. I was once known as the boy shepherd who eventually slayed a giant known as the slayer of 10,000s, not to be confused with the other guy who only slayed his thousands. I truly do miss the quiet, peaceful fields with the sheep. One time this bear decided to act out of pocket, so I had to show him why they call me Slingshot McGee. Now I am king. There is a war that has broken out, and I'm sure you know that a king has to make sure things are well at home as well as on the battlefield. Now, sometimes more home than on the battlefield. So let's see what's on today's agenda. The War Council, taxes, the upcoming festival, and my usual balcony walk. I do enjoy my balcony walk because I oversee the city, and I can tell you that some sites are better than others, if you catch my drift. As the king, I'm afforded more luxury than others, but why else would they pick me to be the king if they didn't trust me to oversee everything? If I see it, I want it, and it's mine, so that's what I did. This woman was bathing, and I should have walked away, but there was just something about her. I told my aide to go fetch her at once. He said, isn't that the wife of... I said, are you questioning the king? He's like, no, your highness, right away. And he brought her to me, and what was done was done. Did I feel bad? Why should I when I'm the king? My aide then comes to me sometime after, and he's like, she's pregnant. And I was like, why is that my problem? Well, because her husband's at war, and you're the only one that she's been with. And he's like, well, that's not good. You know, where you should be. And I was like, are you being smart? No, your highness, never. I never would be. Well, call her husband back and we'll just have to spend some time with her to cover this mess. Her husband returns and he's also someone that I call my friend. So this shouldn't be a problem. We have shared countless battlefields and moments, and he is someone I can easily call my day one. I catch up with him, I pour him 1 or 10 drinks, and I tell him, why don't you stop by your house? You know, it's been a while. And he's like, I cannot go to my house while my friends and everybody else is out on the battlefield. I cannot deserve such luxuries. And I should have taken a hint at the time. Instead, I panicked and sent an order to the general commanding that my friend be moved to the vanguard where the fighting was the fiercest. Then after a fake pincer attack, pull the troops back. The general knew what I was plotting, but he listened to his liege nonetheless. My friend died that day. I helped his widow mourn, as a good friend would do. It was the least I could do to take her in, because if something happened to me, I'd want my friends to take care of my family, right? Nathan the prophet then came and reprimanded me heavily. I realized truly the folly and errors of my ways. I apologized and repented thoroughly. Sadly, we lost the child during birth. I'll never forget what I have done. And sometimes I think back to myself, how was a cheater, stealer, murderer even considered a man after God's own heart? Who am I? I'm glad you asked. If you ask anyone who knows me, I keep it on me at all times. I stay strapped because you never know when the Roman ops are going to come through, and you just have to be prepared. You know, I got to stay 10 toes down for Judea and Capernaum. Have you ever heard the term someone that cusses like a sailor? Well, you have me to thank for that. I remember one day my master told me to follow him. I don't remember initially why I did it, but it would be one of the best decisions of my life. It was 3.5 years of traveling, witnessing the most mind-blowing miracles, like my master actually walked on water. And he even invited me to come out. And I was like, say less. So I walked on water too. Kind of, mostly, almost. But you know, that happened so long ago, I don't remember it carefully. And I started to sink. And yeah, all the other disciples, they said, oh, I thought you were a fisherman. How is it that you don't know how to swim in the water? Go ahead, get your jokes, and I get it. And I'm telling you, he picked me up and brought me up. Those carpenters are a lot stronger than they look, I tell you that. Sorry, I'm working through some anger issues. But if you keep talking, I might have to cut someone's ear. I apologize. I remember one time there was a funeral procession when we were walking through Nain. Man, they don't call them Wailers for nothing. You know, I was thinking one day, if I started my own music group, let me know how this sounds. What about Capernaum and the Wailers? How does that sound? No? Oh, okay, maybe not. You know, I'm just thinking, sorry, I get distracted sometimes. There was a widow who was on the way to bury her son, and my master stopped, and I caught a glimpse of his face. As always, there was pain, compassion, hope, and understanding. How could one face produce so many emotions is still confusing to me. He walked over, stopped the procession, and told the woman, don't cry. Everyone was like, come on, big dog. She just lost her only family. How are you just gonna be like, stop crying, like this is okay just to not cry in a sad moment? Without missing a beat, my master turns to the dead body and tells him to get up. And guess what happened? You wouldn't believe it. That boy got up, turned to his mother, and said hello. The Wailers became fainters. Houseway, who is this man? I don't know exactly who he is, but them Roman ops better watch out, because we got one on them. It doesn't matter how many of us fall on the battlefield, we're going to come back up, because that's who he is. But unlike what I thought would happen, my original plan did not seem to be the same plan my master had, as one of us betrayed him. Can you believe it? We were with him for 3.5 years, and one of us would betray him? I know that couldn't be me, because I stay 10 toes down. Y'all know me, right? And then as the arrest happened, and I'm contemplating like, yo, how could this happen to my master? Someone approaches me and says, hey, weren't you in the garden when that man got arrested? I was like, nah, this sword is just popular. You know, it's a special edition. You know, I got encrusted with the jewels. You've probably seen someone else with this. Not many of them, but I could see how you'd be able to confuse me with someone else. And someone else was like, nah, I'm pretty sure you were one of the people that fed me during the 5,000. He was like, man, there were thousands of people there. How are you going to remember one face? Is this guy for reals? Come on. Nope, I'm pretty sure there's still blood on your sword from when you cut the servant's ear. All right, you listen here, you bleeping bleep on a bleep. I don't know any bleeping bleep, so leave me the bleep alone before I go ahead and start a bleeping ear collection. You hear me? And then it happened. I heard the rooster crow, and the words of my master, verily I say unto thee, that this night before the rooster crows, thou shalt deny me thrice. The pain and anguish that filled me was unbearable. How could I, his most boisterous ride or die, do this to my day one? I thought it was over for me. I had nothing left. I was ashamed and embarrassed. But in that moment, I looked up and I saw my master's face. And the same look of understanding, pain, compassion, but most importantly, I will never forget, forgiveness. Sometimes I think back to myself How could an obnoxious, gat-carrying, foul-mouthed sailor ever be choosing to follow the master, then tasked with feeding his lambs and sheep? All of these people that we just discussed questioned, why did God choose them? Well, who is God? I'm glad you asked. Exodus 34 tells me that he is a merciful, gracious, patient, and abounding in goodness and truth. Isaiah 43 tells me that besides him, there is no other Savior. 1 John 4 tells me that he is the progenitor of love. Deuteronomy 7 tells me that he is faithful and keeps his promises. Isaiah 40 tells me that he is the creator of all things and never gets tired nor needs rest. 1 John 1 tells me that he will forgive me of my sins if I confess them, and he will cleanse me from all unrighteousness. Numbers 23 tells me that he is not a man, and due to his character, he is unable to lie. Malachi 3 tells me that he is the Lord and he will never change. Zephaniah 3 tells me he is mighty and that he will save me. He is glad to know me and he will pour his love over me as he sings to me. Revelation 22 tells me he is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Romans 5 tells me even before I had the opportunity to love him, he proved his love for us. For even as I was a sinner and did not accept him, he died for me. You may be wondering why God would choose you. Well, I'm glad you asked. Because in Romans chapter 8, verses 39 and 38 and 39, it says, I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus the Lord. Amen.